Okay.
Welcome everyone to another Invisible Architecture interview. And I'm Carol Lasat, and I'm so honored today to have Robert Waggoner, who is like the master of lucid dreaming. He's written two of the main books. I think one of them's been translated in 9 languages, right, Robert? Well, welcome, Robert.
Well, thanks. It's great to be here, Carol. And yes, one of the books has been translated into 8 languages, and
Oh,
the
okay.
other 6 or 7. So they're getting around the world.
And they've been the first one was way back, wasn't it? That's when
Right.
that,
It
yeah.
it's been about a dozen years, and it's been reprinted more than 15 times, I believe.
Wow. So it's been around the world. So how did you get into lucid dreaming? Oh, maybe
Well,
even give it this, first of all, like what it really is. Yeah.
yeah. So a lucid dream is any dream in which you realize within the dream that you're dreaming. You literally know, hey, this is a dream. I'm dreaming this. And so that's what we call a lucid dream. Um, the the way I got into it, I think, is as a child, I just had an interesting dream life. I had on occasion precognitive dreams and the occasional spontaneous lucid dream. But it wasn't until I was in high school in 1975 that I taught myself a technique to become lucidly aware.
And was that the Castaneda one?
Right. That was the inspiration for it. I was reading the book by Carlos Castaneda called Journey to Ixtlan. And in that book, his shamanic teacher, Don Juan, uh, tells him that he should try to find his hands in the dream state and realize he's dreaming. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought, what? Really? And there wasn't a technique. And so I just invented a technique because I knew about the power of suggestion. And so I just would suggest to myself for about 5 minutes before I'd go to sleep while I looked at the palms of my hands. I'd tell myself, tonight, my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight, my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. And I would just say that softly over and over before I went to sleep. And on the third night, I'm of doing that practice. I'm walking through my high school hallway and my hands just pop right in front of me. And I go, oh my God, my hands, this is a dream. And it was so wild to become consciously aware within that lucid dream and really know, hey, this is a dream. I'm dreaming this. So that was my very first experience with lucid dreaming.
I remember when I did it way back, this teacher, the thing was that you were supposed to turn over a table.
Oh,
Yours,
good grief.
yours was so much more subtle.
Yeah. Well, it kind of works on kind of a psychological technique called operant conditioning,
Uh-huh.
and where you create a stimulus, the sight of your hands, and the first thought has to be, this is a dream. And so in a dream, you might be climbing a ladder and see your hands and go, wait a second, this is a dream.
Mm-hmm.
So um, you just never know what might prompt that lucid awareness, but I just made my hands as the stimulus to
Yeah.
think this is a dream.
Well, I know in your books you had written about that many times when people just hear the word lucid dreaming, um, they all of a sudden will have a lucid dream. It just kind of brings up something. And so that happened to me Saturday night. And I was so shocked because I usually wake up around 3 to 4, like at that time. And had been in a gallery looking at these 3 paintings. And then I'm kind of laying there, and then this lucid dream thing came to me, and I went, "Oh, let me go back in a lucid." And I was there, back in it, and I was going through each painting, like separating the veils on them, going into
Oh,
the
wow.
depth, how what the artist had gone through,
Yeah.
and then it just faded.
Oh, how beautiful. Well, great. Yeah. That's one thing that I've realized that sometimes that when just hearing about lucid dreaming or just getting your mind thinking about it or knowing that you're going to interview somebody about lucid dreaming in a few days
Mhm.
is enough to bring that into your waking or into your dreaming experience. And then you wake up within the lucid dream and realize, hey, this is a dream. I'm dreaming this.
But it seems the problem is kind of duration. I mean, it just I couldn't hold on to it. It just faded.
Right. So, in my books, I talk about that because you're right. That's probably the number one complaint that people have is that their lucid dreams, they're just lucid for 30 seconds or whatever, and then it fades away. But in my books, I encourage people to learn how to have longer, more stable lucid dreams. There's a few things you can do that normally should uh, help a person have a long, stable lucid dream. And so, there's been recorded instances of people having lucid dreams in the sleep lab for like 40 minutes or so.
Wow.
They continue to signal with their eyes, hey, I'm lucidly aware within here. And so you can have really long lucid dreams, but again, it takes a little bit of practice and it helps to know the tips and techniques, which is why people like me write books.
Well,
And
can we have a couple of those techniques?
yeah, so the first technique I'd say is that you have to remain calm. Oftentimes, as a beginning lucid dreamer, you realize that if you get too excited, you're going to pop out of the lucid dream. So you have to stay calm. So no matter what occurs, don't get too ecstatic or too excited or get too bummed out or emotional on the other end. Just, try to stay in that kind of happy center and just, mellow out. Oftentimes, if you tell yourself, hey, stay calm, or this is a dream, or whatever would make you feel calmer,
Mhm.
then oftentimes you will respond just automatically to any kind of vocalized command. So that would be number one. And then probably number two would be it helps to enhance your awareness within the lucid dream. So you might announce greater awareness now or greater clarity now. And oftentimes it's like someone turns up the lights in the lucid dream. It's like it's showing you, it's reflecting back to you that, oh, now your awareness has increased
Mhm.
and also that helps. And then things like, if I became lucidly aware, I might rub my hands together. And
Mhm.
even though they're dream hands, you'll still have that sense of two hands rubbing together. And that'll make the space seem more real or more legitimate or that you're truly there.
Mhm.
And that helps solidify and stabilize the lucid dream.
So when you're in these lucid dreams, and there's these characters, these dream characters, are they like, do they have a reality of their own many times, or are they,
So what I tell people is all dream figures are not created equal. Some dream figures are just kind of one of the thousand cast of characters. They're just there because you're having a lucid dream about a party and a party should have 30 people and so they're
Mhm.
the 29 cast of characters over there that really have no role. But normally, if you begin to interact with dream figures, what I always encourage people to do is ask a simple question like, who are you? Or what do you represent? And
Mm.
normally when you ask a dream figure, who are you? Oftentimes it'll tell you exactly who it is or what it represents. And that's really helpful, especially when you have nightmares where something's chasing you. Because when something's chasing you, it's trying to get your attention. And when you turn around and ask it, who are you or what do you represent? Oftentimes you'll come to understand exactly what the issue is that's chasing you that you've failed to face. But you're right. In this whole realm of dream figures, there's a lot of different ones because you sometimes lucid dreamers become consciously aware when they see a deceased relative, and
Mm.
they go, wait a second, Aunt Mary's been dead for 10 years now. What's she doing here? This is a dream, and
Mm.
they'll become lucidly aware. And so I always encourage if you ever see a deceased relative or loved one, become lucid and ask them, what do you have to tell me? Or what are you doing
Ah,
here?
'cause they have
And,
a
and,
message.
and oftentimes you'll discover that they have a message. However, if they're just a dream figure, if they're just a projection of your mind, then normally they'll just stare at you blankly and you'll have this sense that they're just a dream figure, they're just empty. So,
Yeah. So, and then how do you change, like you're in one situation, can you change to another
well,
easily? Like, you know what I mean? Like into a,
So there's a lot of ways of changing the lucid dream. And again, it helps to be practice in this because you got to be ready for when the entire lucid dream would change over. But for what I discovered, so again, I taught myself how to lucid dream in 1975. The scientific evidence came out in 1980. And then in 1985, I was part of a lucid dreaming group that every month for 3 years, we had goals to achieve in a lucid dream. And in one of those months, the goal was to find out what the dream figures represent. And so I became lucid. I walked up to a gentleman and said, "Excuse me, but what do you represent?" And instead of him responding, a voice from above him boomed out a partial response. And so I looked up and I said, "Blah, blah, blah, what?" And then it boomed out the entire response of what this dream figure represented. So when I woke up the next day, I thought, what was that voice, this invisible voice answering for the dream figure? And that's when I began to realize that there's an awareness behind the dream, that in a sense, you can interact with your unconscious mind within a lucid dream, and you can ask it questions, and oftentimes it'll reply. And sometimes when it replies, it'll change the entire lucid dream landscape, and you'll find yourself in a whole new realm.
So are they using lucid dreams for therapy?
They are. Where lucid dreaming currently connects with therapy is with post-traumatic stress disorder and recurring nightmares. So a lot of people who have PTSD, every night they have the same nightmarish scenario repeat. They don't sleep very well. Sometimes they begin to drink alcohol or take drugs so they can try and fall asleep. And so they get into substance abuse and all. But what they have taught people is that if you can become lucidly aware just once within that recurring nightmare and just change one thing, then normally the nightmares cease. And also there was a doctor, Dr. Krakow from the University of New Mexico. He came up with a technique based on lucid dreaming that anybody could use. You don't even have to lucid dream. And that's called imagery rehearsal therapy, IRT. And basically, he asked people to just imagine the nightmare, and now, as if they'd become lucidly aware, begin to change the nightmare towards a better ending or a better resolution. And then to start practicing this kind of active imagination 20 or 30 minutes a day. And normally within a few weeks, the person's nightmares cease.
Oh, so it's not even within the sleep. It's just
right. So he took the ideas of lucid dreaming and just moved it into the imaginal realm while waking, and found that he basically had the same sort of results that people who practice his imagery rehearsal technique. And normally you'd want to do that after understanding it very deeply or working with a therapist. But normally they have a resolution of the recurring nightmares then.
So what are a couple of your really dreams that really helped you with, I don't know, you've written about in spirituality and all of these different things, probably physics. We could be looking at all these different categories.
Well, I think one lucid dream that was personally satisfying for me was 20-some years ago, my father passed away. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to wait a few months and then I'm going to try to find him in a lucid dream. So about 3 months later, I became lucidly aware. I remember I wanted to find my father now that he was deceased. And what was odd, though, all the dream figures told me it was a bad idea. They told me it wasn't time yet. The time wasn't right. And because they were all in kind of unanimous view, I thought, okay, maybe it's not time to go in search of my dad. And maybe, it's taking more than 3 months to get settled in the after-death state. And so instead, I asked all the dream figures I'd point at things in the lucid dream and tell them to explain to me the symbolism. Why is this symbol here? What does this represent? So when I woke up, I thought, okay, if my dad wants to contact me, then I'll just wait until he wants to contact me. And so it was about 3 years later. If you can imagine, I see this gold ladder, and it coming down the ladder is my father. And so immediately I become lucid because I realized that he passed away a few years ago.
Mhm.
And then I started to laugh because he had such a bad haircut. And and I thought, he
Oh,
can't
that's
even get
funny.
a good haircut in the after death state. And so then I began to wonder, well, wait a second, is this my father as a spiritual being in the after death state, or is this just a dream symbol, just a projection of my mind?
Mhm.
Because it could be either. So when he got down, we greeted each other, and I decided to ask him questions to see whether he is a projection of my mind or whether he was something else, a valid person in his own right. And so I asked him, I said, "Hey, Dad, you're from the land of the dead. When do you think Mom's going to pass away?" And he said, "Probably in 2 to 6 years." I said, "Of what?" And he said, "A heart condition." And that really surprised me because my mom had never had any heart trouble.
Mhm.
And then I asked him another question, and he responded. And then he told me, "Please be quiet because I came to tell you things."
Whoa.
And then he spent the next 5 or 10 minutes telling me things about the family that he wanted me to be aware of, and he wanted to pass on this information. And so in the morning when I woke up, I wrote down the entire lucid dream, and as it turned out, about 23 months later, so almost 2 years exactly later, my mom went to the hospital and almost died of a heart condition.
Wow.
And then about 3 years after that, she went back to the hospital and almost passed away again from a heart condition. This time it was because of a prescription drug that she was taking that the medical community realized was actually harming people's hearts.
Mm.
So, but she made it through that 2 to 6 years. But in any case, those kind of lucid dreams are really powerful because you get some information that
Yeah.
you can wake up with, and then you can validate it or verify it. I've met a number of lucid dreamers who have talked to deceased loved ones and relatives, and they've either learned family secrets or had the deceased loved one tell them, "I left something with you with this particular family. You have to call up that family and get this thing that I left for you." And when
Mhm.
they wake, they call up that family, and the family says, "Oh, we've been looking for you for years.
Wow.
Your mom gave us this box that she wanted us to give you." And so when you have it validated and verified like that, I think that's really powerful, and also kind of calls into question the idea that we just have one life and that's it.
It's the multiverse.
Apparently so.
Uh, so, yeah, so sometimes it's not a real person, like didn't know whether it was your real dad or not. So but then you validate it with the information.
Right. Because when my dad first passed away, that next week I would have dreams, and there would be my dad. He and I would be seated at the TWA uh, counter, or place at the airport.
Mhm.
And so for old timers, they know that TWA stands for Trans World Airlines. And then when I woke up, I realized, oh, that
That's a
I
good one.
I'm coming to grips with my dad kind of departing the physical world and being part of a different world. And so in those dreams, he would just sit there like a potted plant. And so I think he was just the dream symbol, and the TWA was just a way of helping me come to terms with the departure of my father. So again, not every dream encounter with a deceased dream figure means that they're there.
Mhm.
But the beautiful thing about a lucid dream is you can begin to interact with that deceased dream figure and kind of come to an understanding of whether they exist and how they exist, and if they have information outside of your own knowing, which would confirm that you've encountered something more than just your subconscious mind.
So your mother passed, right?
Well,
And
so
you tried to contact her?
it's interesting, Carol. So she made it through that 2 to 6 year period, and she continued to live for a long, long time.
Okay.
But here a year ago, she did pass away. And what was interesting about that was this. My first dream of 2022 was my mother-in-law, who's deceased. She appeared,
Hmm.
and I immediately became lucid because, oh, there's my mother-in-law. And then I started to laugh again because she passed away like a dozen years ago. And I thought, boy, it's been 12 years now. And she's finally coming to see me and all. And so she comes up to me and she says, I want you to know that September is a very important month. And I looked at her and said, okay, Nona, if you believe that September is important, I'm sure it's very important. And she shook her head and said, no, I want you to understand that September is going to be a very important month. So again, this lucid dream is occurring on January 1st of 2022. And so I realize that she fades away. I wake up and write it down. But as soon as I wake up, I realize, oh, she's coming to tell me that my mom's going to pass away. And she's basically given me 9 months notice. And, it's normally 9 months that between the conception of a child and its birth. And so she's kind of giving me 9 months notice the other way. And as it turned out, the last weekend of August, my wife and I went to see my mother and had a lovely visit. My mom, she's in her 90s, but she had, she's very intelligent and sharp and has all her memories and all. And I realized that this was probably going to be the very last time I saw my mom. And it was a week later. So now the calendar moved into September and she passed away. So the beautiful thing, again, is sometimes in lucid dreams, we get information, we get a heads up, and it's oftentimes very straightforward. Sometimes I've noticed sometimes that when deceased dream figures give kind of future information, sometimes I don't know how to say it, sometimes they'll kind of put it in a way that it's not totally completely direct, but they're definitely giving you a very, very strong hint of something coming your way. So
Why do you think
I
that
really appreciate that. Why do I kind of wonder, like in Star Trek in the show, they had the prime directive that they couldn't influence cultures that weren't as technologically advanced. And so I don't know if I've seen this in other people's lucid dream reports too. Like someone might be meeting their deceased grandmother within a lucid dream. And then at the very end of the lucid dream, the deceased grandmother just blurt out a word, which is the name of a stock on the New York Stock Exchange. She doesn't say buy this stock. She doesn't say sell this stock. She just blurts out the name. And the person wakes up thinking, is my deceased grandmother trying to give me a stock tip? And then they realize, boy, if they would have bought that stock the next day, by the end of the year, it had tripled or something.
Wow.
And so you just kind of wonder if they have kind of, if there's kind of a rule set up that, you can hint at something, but you can't just nail something totally on the head like that. But
it's interesting. Yeah. The last person I interviewed was really an expert researcher on the Dogon tribe, and they don't have a written language. And so you have to be with them for years until they feel that they could share information, and they draw it in the dirt. But I mean, they have all of their science, physics, and that is right there. But one archaeologist had to stay there, anthropologist had to stay there for 23 years and be initiated, and then they told him. It just reminds me of that.
Right. And that's kind of an interesting thing about lucid dreaming too. The scientific evidence for lucid dreaming came out around 1980, but for 2,000 years beforehand, basically there's been Buddhist dream yoga, which is using the technique of lucid dreaming and marrying it with Buddhist philosophy to explore dreaming and kind of understand the actual nature of things. Sufism has used lucid dreaming for 900 years, 1,000 years. A lot of native and shamanic traditions have used lucid dreaming for thousands of years. But if you're not part of the initiation of that group, they're a little bit loath to share anything with you. And so, I think that's why a lot of people like my first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, because I was a little bit upset as a lucid dreamer. I'd been lucid dreaming for 30 years by the time I wrote the book. And I'm thinking there's all this depth and potential in lucid dreaming. There's accessing creativity, engaging this larger awareness, the unconscious mind or the inner self or whatever. There's emotional healing, there's physical healing, there's doing spiritual practices within lucid dreams. But for the most part, nobody was talking about any of this. No one had written any books on it. They just written some beginner books that were nice, but that just didn't give people the whole platform of possibilities. And so that's why I wrote my first book. I wanted people to understand there's so much more you can do.
I never read Castaneda's Art of Dreaming. Was that about that?
So his book, Art of Dreaming, I think it came out in 1993. And basically, it's about lucid dreaming.
Oh, okay.
And here's what I found interesting. A lot of people said, Carlos Castaneda is a fraud. And, there are even books written, where people tried to show and prove that was the case.
Yeah.
But here in this book, Art of Dreaming, that came out in 1993, he asked Don Juan, what is this non-visible voice that responds when I make questions or requests within a lucid dream? And so you have to remember, is back in 1985, I realized that there is an awareness behind the dream.
Right.
And so here it is, 8 years later in this book, Carlos Castaneda is talking about basically the awareness behind the dream. And Don Juan told him, oh, that's the dreaming emissary. It'll always tell you the truth whenever you ask a question. And he goes on to describe it. But what I'm trying to get to here is you would have had to have been a very good lucid dreamer at that time to know that there was an awareness behind the dream, that there's this non-visible voice that responds when you make requests and questions in a lucid dream. And so I'm saying that you don't talk to a dream figure, you ignore the dream figures, you just look up and ask a question like, hey, dream, show me something important for me to see. And then suddenly the entire lucid dream changes. So again, this shows to me that Castaneda either had some real insight into lucid dreaming somehow, and I'd have to assume that it came from his own personal experience.
Yeah, there's in so many of the books, there is little bits of wisdom like that all through them.
Right, exactly.
And I had written an article, I don't know, like a few years ago, and it was about first sleep, second sleep, that our ancestors, you're gone.
I'm there. I just have to power up my computer. Otherwise, we're going to have a very short conversation here.
Okay. But so with this second, first sleep, second sleep, on the second sleep, it would be around 3 or 4 that they would wake up and they would go visit. It was known. You would get up and you'd go visit neighbors, you'd read a book, all these different things. Even the Catholic Church had like prayers and little rituals you do during your time between your first and second sleep. And so I was thinking that might be like a thing where you would have the dream and everything, and then you would go back in your second sleep that was accepted. And that's where you would have your lucid dreaming, Well,
it's interesting. So a lot of times in monasteries and all, they would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to meditate.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes as they're meditating, just after they've waken up, sometimes they would, in those states, basically enter a lucid dream state, and there they might have some powerful spiritual experience or discover something. And so in some regards, that's kind of similar to what you were referring to, kind of the second sleep.
Because it's
But
become such a thing now that you have to sleep 8 hours, you know? And I
yeah,
mean, that was never a reality. And then when people wake up at 3 or 4, oh, it's EMF, the drones are going to, or something. And it's just kind of a natural cycle that we had.
right. I think you're right. When you go back thousands of years, people didn't go to sleep at 9 o'clock at night and, wake up
Right.
at 6 in the morning or whatever. They would wake up in the middle of the night. They would tend the fire. They'd make sure things are safe.
Mm-hmm.
They might wander around for an hour and then go back to sleep. So I think once upon a time, sleep habits were much different than what they are now. And for some people, it might actually help them just to kind of return to a more natural sleep state. And
Mm-hmm.
if they want to get up at 3 a.m., they just get up at 3 a.m. and they might take a nap in
That's
the
it.
middle of the day or whatever. Yeah.
So when you're talking about all this, you have like a website where people send in their recorded dreams. Is that it? Lucid.
Right, right. So for 20 some years now, my friend Lucy and I have created an online magazine called the Lucid Dreaming Experience.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to luciddreamingmagazine.com, you can read it. But there, in each issue, I interview an experienced lucid dreamer. And
Mm.
so here in this upcoming issue, March 2023, I interview a young woman who is a blind lucid dreamer.
A
And
what?
so she's blind.
Oh, blind.
She's
Oh.
been blind since birth,
Mm.
but still she has lucid dreams. Because oftentimes people think of lucid dreams as a very visual thing, and dreaming itself is a very visual thing. But
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting here. This woman read my book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple, and taught herself how to lucid dream, even though she's blind, and really having some interesting experiences. I was really captivated by that. But in each issue of this magazine, we have an interview, we have a bunch of articles sent in from lucid dreamers, and then we have about 15 pages of reader submitted lucid dreams. And
Mm.
so people submit these lucid dreams that are just, it's really wonderful to see people and what they do, because
Mm-hmm.
everyone has their own unique focus, and they get to explore that in the lucid dream state.
But this blind woman, in her dreams, can she actually see them or not?
No, she
Oh.
doesn't see, but I so that was one of my questions. How is it that you move around? And she
Mm-hmm.
says, well, it's interesting. I hear this humming and I know that there's something above me. And so in the lucid dream, she reaches up, she can't see, but she
Mm-hmm.
reaches up towards where the sound is.
Mm-hmm.
And normally it's like a stick. And she uses this stick to move around the lucid dream. It'll take her where she wants to go. And
Whoa.
so, and so I thought, well, that's a wild way
Yeah.
to maneuver around. And and uh, and she says, in this way, she feels very secure as she moves through the lucid dream environment. But again, then you have to think, okay, a blind person who was blind from birth, a lot of them learn at an early age how to walk with a cane, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll tap things as they go down the sidewalk or go down the hallway, and
Mm-hmm.
they kind of figure out their way. And so I can't figure out if this kind of stick thing that she's talking about is kind of the symbolic
Mm-hmm.
version in the lucid dream of what a walking cane is for a person during the waking hours. But
Well, there's something you'd never think about.
yeah, but it's really interesting also because she'll interact with this kind of inner awareness and
Mm-hmm.
ask it questions and all, just like other lucid dreamers do. So it's really a fascinating way of kind of getting into another person's experience, especially a person who's doesn't see and
Yeah.
doesn't have a visual reference point.
Mm-hmm. But you've had this for 25 years.
Yeah, this magazine for 22 years. We've been doing the Lucid Dreaming Experience, and so we'll hear from lucid dreamers all around the world. Who will send in their lucid dreams, or share an article or whatever. We have a deep readership all around the world.
So are there themes that you see that keep repeating?
Well, sometimes we'll have special issues on things.
Oh,
Like we've had special issues on healing in lucid dreams. And
mm-hmm,
so healing can be very broad. You can have emotional healing,
mm-hmm.
healing from trauma, healing from physical injury, healing from physical ailments. And those are always just extraordinary lucid dreams that people send in.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have had profound healings within a lucid dream. A lot of these folks, of course, have read my first book, Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple, or Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self. And in that book, I have an entire chapter on healing in lucid dreams and how people have gone about it. I give about a dozen successful examples of people who managed to heal something within a lucid dream. And then I give a couple of examples where the person had no change. But I bring those examples up just to show how the person did things that basically made sure that they didn't have a change. Basically, they do a number of things that keep a healing from happening, even though they're in search of a healing.
So when you're bringing the knowledge that like people, get within these lucid dreams, how have they applied that like in the outer world? Has there been any like a great like inventions and different like things like that?
Right. Yeah, there have been. This is an example. I was on a public radio show talking about lucid dreaming and creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And a gentleman called up, and he was from the Iowa Writers Workshop, which
Mm-hmm.
is this famous
Yeah.
writing program at the University of Iowa that Kurt Vonnegut used to head up. But what the gentleman said, he said he was a novelist, a
Mm-hmm.
professional writer, and
Mm-hmm.
that whenever he got stuck in a novel, he would try to have a lucid dream. And
Mm-hmm.
then when he became lucid, he would call out for the novel characters to come visit him. And
Ah,
he said
yeah.
suddenly they'd appear. And then he'd ask him, how do we make this novel better? Or how do we fix this novel? And oftentimes the novel characters who were there would explain to him something, like, oh, you shouldn't have killed grandma in chapter 3. We need grandma at the end to explain the family secret. And he said he was just blown away by the creativity. Another guy called up and said that he was a professional musician,
Mm-hmm.
and when he would become lucidly aware, he would seek out the most incredible music that he could hear. And so,
Mm-hmm.
for example, he might become lucid and say, "Oh, when I go into that building over there, I'll hear the most incredible music I can create." And he'll walk in there and there'll be music playing, and he'll do his best to memorize, the lyrics and the song. And so there's a lot of ways that people have used it. There was a story in Stephen LaBerge's book, Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming, of a computer programmer. So whenever he'd get stuck with a computer program, he'd
Mm-hmm.
try to have a lucid dream. And when he became lucid, he'd call on Albert Einstein to appear. And suddenly Albert Einstein would appear, and they'd sit there at the table and work through the program code until they figured out the problem. And then he'd tell Einstein to go away so he could memorize it. And he'd memorize it, take it into work. And he said 99% of the time it was the solution. And
Wow.
so there's a lot of ways that people have used their awareness within a lucid dream to access that deep creativity and wake up with it and use it for their own good in the waking world.
Yeah. So people when they're doing this lucid dreaming, do they like report how it affects them in their everyday life? Does it have a real effect in their everyday life?
So you see this, especially more so with experienced lucid dreamers, because I'll tell you what happens with a lot of beginner lucid dreamers. You become consciously aware within the dream, and you can fly. And what do? You just go fly around, or you fly through walls, or you talk to dream figures, or you dance on the ceiling. You just have fun. And so a lot of people just do that. And when they wake up in the morning, they normally feel very excited and full of energy and vitality and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what more experienced lucid dreamers discover. So let's say you do this. Let's say you become lucidly aware,
Mm-hmm.
and you ignore what's going on around you, and you just decide to meditate within a lucid dream.
Oh.
Now, normally what will happen within 20 or 30 seconds, you'll be having the deepest meditative experience, the most transcendent, profound one that you've ever had within 20 or 30 seconds.
Wow.
And so let's say you do this 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in 10 different lucid dreams.
Mm-hmm.
You just start meditating within the lucid dream. What people report is this. They report that after 5 or 10 lucid dreams of meditating, then they find that in their waking state, when they meditate, that within 4 or 5 minutes, now they're getting to this very deep level that used to take them 20 or 30 minutes of meditating. And so that's how it affects the person. It things that you do in the lucid dream state, you might not realize it until you get to something more advanced like meditating. It'll affect your waking meditation such that it'll make it much easier and much deeper and more profound.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So again, that's why lucid dreaming has this many thousands of years tradition in spiritual practices and native shamanic practices. And so they really saw it as something really truly valuable and amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And but I know a lot of people are into lucid dreaming, but they just don't see the value or purpose in it. They like to have fun. They like to fly around like Superman or walk on water, but they don't really understand the deeper part.
Mm-hmm. And has it been, do they use it like in therapy and things for children at all, or is it more for adults?
No, the issue of using it for post-traumatic stress disorder, recurring nightmares is normally more with adults.
Mm-hmm.
Lucid dreaming and the whole field of dreaming just doesn't get very much research money.
Oh.
Even though you can bring it into the sleep lab and have lucid dreamers do it in the sleep lab, it's still hard for researchers to get money to do lucid dream research. And so a lot of the uses that anecdotally, I hear people using it to overcome phobias or overcome anxiety or overcome, addictions and things like that. Anecdotally, you hear that, but in terms of researchers having the money to research that, it's
Isn't that amazing? It just seems like how things are moving. This would be such a field. With the drugs coming out and it just seems like.
Well, I think part of the problem is that even when the scientific evidence for lucid dreaming came out in 1980, it was really hard for some of the established researchers to accept that lucid dreaming existed. I mean, they literally fought for 2 years, even though more and more evidence kept appearing that showed that lucid dreaming existed. They fought it just because some of them came from a Freudian viewpoint. Some of them came from a Jungian viewpoint. Some of them came that there's only the brain and we're having brain experiences and the brain can't become aware within a dream that it's dreaming. It's just an impossibility. So you have all these viewpoints, but when you begin to show the scientific evidence over and over and over, finally people came to accept it. But the problem though, you think of all the people out there giving out research funds. If you haven't had a lucid dream, you don't understand what it's really about.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of young researchers now who are just waiting for the day when there'll be more money put in this area that they can use it to explore some of these things like emotional healing and physical healing and all of that. But for now, they're just like Don Juan would say, they're just tales of power.
You have to wait for the old guard to pass.
You'd hope that wasn't the case, but it might be the case, particularly here.
Okay, well, this was great. And, can you give us, I'm going to, when I put it out, I'll give all your links and links to your books and things, but can you give them your websites? And I know a lot of people in the community that watch these shows would be very interested.
Yeah, so my main website is Lucid, Lucid, lucidadvice.com.
Oh, okay.
Go to lucidadvice.com. And there you can kind of check into the workshops I'm doing and various things. And also you can send me a question or so if you have one. Then we have our online magazine, the Lucid Dreaming Experience. And you can find that at luciddreamingmagazine.com.
Okay.
And check out what we're doing in each issue of that.
Because that would be a great one to go and just see the different experiences people have, because I'm sure it's so diverse. Yeah.
Oh, it truly is. And that's kind of the beauty of it. Everyone's coming from their own vantage point and their own personal life experience. And so you have just extraordinary lucid dreams.
Well, thank you. There was so much information here.
Well, thanks, Carol. I appreciate it.
Just all of this, so many years. I think you did didn't they say, I read somewhere, 1,000 lucid dreams you recorded?
Right. So again, just because you become a lucid dreamer doesn't mean that every dream is a lucid one. You might just have 1 or 2 lucid dreams a month, but if you learn, like I tell in my books, how to make them lucid dreams of quality and lucid dreams of power, then you can really do some extraordinary things and truly blow your own mind.
Okay, thank you again. And happy lucid dreaming, everyone. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Carol.